Bunny. I missed you, Bunny. So. Sorry, I couldn't resist. Hi everyone, welcome back. I read Bunny and I wanted to talk to you about the book and about things I read on Reddit after I read it. And just have a little chat, a little spoilery chat about this book. And as a tribute to my starting point here on YouTube, I wanted to do my makeup while filming this and transform myself into a bunny. Don't know what you think. I even put on some jewelry and made my hair look bunny-like. I hope it makes sense. So yeah, I think it got a little confusing, so please don't be too harsh to me. It's a lot talking about this book, but yeah, enjoy No Makeup Jenny in a few seconds. Figuring out the setup was a mess, but I hope you appreciate my bunny-esque look. I tried, okay? I tried getting rid of my bitch curtain. Let's see how it goes. I think I'm going to start with telling you a little bit about the book for all the ones who haven't read it already. I will put a disclaimer when I will talk about spoilers and also go through the Reddit comments I screenshotted. But yeah, if you haven't heard about this book already, it's kind of a dark academia story, you could say, maybe. It's just about a girl, her name is Samantha, and she goes to Warren University because she wants to be a writer, and the department of writing is divided into the different genres, you can say, and she's a fiction writer, so she is in a group with all the other fiction writers, which happen to be just 4 other women that have become really close during the last year, and she was kind of the outsider, and they are called the Bunnies because they call each other Bunny as a cute nickname, and they dress really kind of strange for women their age, you could say. They are you see how I look like right now, so you maybe can picture how they are described. But yeah, she's there, she's writing, she's kind of an outsider, not really part of their group, thinks they are very strange, but then someday she gets invited to one of their workshops. They have workshops like in university where they each have to present things they have been writing, and then the tutor is giving feedback and each other giving feedback, and they have their separate kind of workshop. And one day Samantha is invited and she goes, and things get pretty weird from that point on. So genre-wise, this book is classified as slight horror and satire of like friendships, women. To me, I am not a horror fan at all. I hate everything that is scary. I haven't watched a horror movie ever in my life because I just don't want to. I watched like a kids series when I was younger, Mona der Vampir. Not scary at all, but I had such horrible nightmares that ever since that happened, I have never watched anything horror related besides Supernatural. And I loved this show, but I had the biggest nightmares ever, so I was a little hesitant going into the story. But to me, it wasn't like crazy horror. It was not really scary. It was just weird and confusing and yeah, weird. And basically, if you haven't read this book, this is a good point for you to step out if you are still interested in reading it, because if you know more, it could ruin your reading experience. I think, at least. I didn't know a lot, just knew that there may or may not be some satanic rituals happening, and that was enough for me to know. And I finished this book very confused. So I'm wishing you a lot of fun reading. Come back when you have read it. Or if you are not interested in reading it yourself, stay here and I will tell you what's happening. Not in depth, but you will get the gist. So while I have my concealer on and look very strange, that's the scary disclaimer picture. Spoiler zone begins now. I just realized that I maybe should talk a little bit more about the context for other people who want to stay in the video but haven't read the book already. So they are at Warren University. She gets invited to this workshop the bunnies are doing, and it turns out that they are creating men from bunnies. They have a bunny, they do a weird kind of singing stuff around this bunny. The bunny explodes with like blood and internals all around the room, like a very hard explosion. And this kind of turns into a hybrid, they call it, or a draft appearing. It's a man from their imagination, but some parts of his body are missing. He has to wear gloves because his hands are not fully done. And they have basically no personality at all. If you ask them questions about themselves, they start screaming until their head explodes. It's just it's just a mess. But that's kind of what they are doing to try to imagine the men they want to write about in their stories. That's how they put it, basically. And Samantha is kind of thrown into this, and she's a part of it now, and she always drinks these weird cocktails, and she's taking these weird colorful Tic Tac pills, and she basically turns into a bunny. And her best friend Ava is not having it at all. Ava is such a cool person with she's very tall, dresses kind of goth-like with like fishnet things around her hands and with a veil in front of her eyes. She has 2 different colored eyes, and her hair is white like feathers. It's always described, important for later. But she's not having it. They have always made fun of the bunnies, how they are cuddling all the time and call each other bunny and say that they missed each other and that they love each other so much. And she kind of saves them. She saves Sam from this group again and kind of makes her realize what's happening. And then stuff gets even weirder. It's been 2 weeks since I read this story, and I forgot some parts of it already, I guess. Somehow the bunnies want to convince Sam to try to lead workshop. The leader is like making the bunny explode, for example. And they have a special bunny for her. But she's just standing there and thinking about what she wishes for and what's important to her. And it basically all evolves around Ava, her best friend, and she's like, no, you're not having that. I don't want to show you what's up with me. I don't want this to work. So the bunny just hops away, and they are like, oh bunny, don't worry, this happens. I mean, it has never happened to me, but I guess it can happen. Like, no, that's the vibe. But then there's this weird kind of man at the bus stop where like feet come from the home to the bus stop, and they're like, are you the bunny? Are you not the bunny? Spoiler, he's not the bunny, he's a stag that Samantha met before she went into the house. But his name is Max, and he is just making the bunnies go crazy and not like each other anymore, because every one of them is interested in Max. Everyone wants to be in a relationship with Max. So they start doing very weird things to impress Max. And that's kind of the revenge Samantha had in her head, because Max is conjured from her feelings and expressions. Fast way forward, there are happening a few things that's not very important if you don't want to read the book, but in the end it turns out Ava is now in a relationship with Max. So Ava, the best friend that Samantha is obviously in love with, is now in a relationship with Max, a thing that she conjured from, she still thinks a bunny, but a stag. And she's confused, like, oh my god, I have to tell Ava that he's not a real person and that he could be dangerous, because the drafts sometimes were dangerous and they had to chop their heads off with an axe. And weird thing is that Max has an axe tattoo like right here at his neck. And it basically is like, it turns into this weird thing that Max is in a relationship with Ava, but is also texting with all the other bunnies and makes them do very weird things. And one day, Samantha is going to university because she got a text that there will be a workshop held, but it's a trap. And she gets like tied to a chair, and her two professors, as drafts, not the real people, but draft professors of her, are talking to her that she's not worth it and that her writing is like awful and that they want to kill her, which they don't, but they say, we will give you something to write about so that you can feel something and write. And so she's just very confused when she gets saved from the cleaning person and goes home, does not see Ava anywhere, but sees a swan and an axe in the swan, and Max crying his eyes out because Ava is dead. Because Ava is the swan. She had white hair like feathers, you know? So basically, Samantha conjured Ava out of a feeling of her own loneliness from a swan before she even got involved with the bunnies. They saw her with the swan and that it's so much better than all the drafts they have created before, because they recognize that it's a draft and not a real person. So they invite Samantha over. That was the whole question. But then Max got into the point, and now they all hate each other because everyone is in love with Max, and you can really see their character development in changing from when they hear each other's writing, from, oh my god, Bunny, that's so great, I love your characters, your ideas are always so good, and to, you always write the same shit, your characters aren't developed at all, it's so boring, I could just go to sleep rather than listening to your story. So you really can see that all of their behavior was fake before, which is kind of obvious, but it's funny to see like the difference after Max arrived. But yeah, they killed Ava, which was Samantha's like only point in being alive. And Max initially takes the axe and wants to kill the bunnies, but she takes the axe from him, has in mind to chop their heads off. But then Max arrives and they all storm through to him, kind of tearing on his arms and legs because they want to have him for themselves. And he shows Samantha the axe tattoo. So she goes and hits the axe right on the tattoo, and then he's a stag again. And the bunnies are kind of just having a fight with each other, and they have broken legs and ribs, and it's a mess. And yeah, they graduate from university, and that's basically it. That's the story. So now you will probably see a part of me without eyebrows. I'm sorry. Okay. If you have read the book, what did you think? Because I was just confused. I was so confused. I just there's no other word to describe my condition after reading this book than confused. Because I was pretty sure that everything I was reading was real for the beginning. I mean, when they had their first workshop, when they made their first hybrid or draft boy, when her love interest from school turned up, I was like, okay, what kind of weird magic is happening here? And also when his head exploded, when, you know, everything, I was like, oh, okay, just kind of magic happening in the story, and it's what's happening. I didn't question it 1 second, because maybe because I'm reading so much fantasy, things like this seem kind of normal to me, that it's possible. I think if you are not a fantasy reader on a regular basis, you might have been confused earlier, but to me I was like, oh yeah, well, that's happening. And then it got to the weird stage when Ava was like disappearing and Sam was all alone in her apartment, and there I started questioning, like, what is actually going on? What's up with Ava? Why is she always there and then she's not there, and she does not have to work, but she owns like all the stuff? I mean, these are the same questions that Sam is asking herself, but I don't know, it was so weird. And then the point when Max came into the story, I mean, I knew he wasn't the bunny. I had a feeling he was the stag, but I felt stupid the whole book. That was basically the only point I got from reading it. But the ending, that Ava isn't a real person, but Sam conjured her from a swan before she even got involved with the bunnies, it was kind of mind-blowing. Because then you thought back to the scene where she was sitting there with Ava on the table waving to them, and they saw Ava laughing and were like, oh my goodness, she has done this creature and we need her, because then we may have more luck with our drafts and they may have real hands and don't have to wear gloves. It was a crazy ending, but also that made me kind of think, okay, but who is real and who isn't? Like, I don't know. I was kind of still in the mindset that everything I read in the story was how the story just goes, so that everything is happening as it is literally written in the book. But it left me still kind of confused, like why can she conjure things without them exploding? Who else might be not a real person? What about Jonah? Is Jonah a real person? Is he not a real person? What is with the bunnies? I don't know. It was just a lot of confusion happening. So took my phone, went to Reddit, and I wanted to see what other people were thinking about this book. Okay, so the first one was actually like the starting point of a Reddit thread that I read, and it says, I have literally just finished this book and I fought with it the whole time, trying to decide if I hated it or was enjoying it. I have since decided to leave it unrated because I don't think I'll ever decide, which is also a point I can get. I liked reading it because I wanted to know what's going on, but at the same time I was just like, what is this? But then the person continues writing, one question I do have is, although it is insinuated that Ava is a figment of Samantha's schizophrenic hallucinations, is there also a component of drug withdrawal in the phase where she is distancing herself from the bunnies? I feel like the part in which everyone else goes home for Christmas and Samantha remains at Warren is particularly murky and unclear, and also coincides with Samantha not taking the Tic Tac pills and weird green cocktails they usually have in workshop. Or am I reading too much into what is ultimately a total shit show? Thanks. So the point of drug withdrawal is actually a very interesting point, because I didn't get that at all while reading it. I mean, I got that she was taking these Tic Tacs, but I thought they were just, the first time they gave them to her were after she saw Rob Valencia, that's his name, Rob Valencia's head explode. So I thought they were just, little, I don't know what I thought they were. But I didn't see that as drug withdrawal. But after reading this comment, it totally makes sense, because when the part where everyone is going home for Christmas and she's just in her apartment, not leaving it, just being miserable, that seems like she's on some kind of withdrawal from maybe these drugs and cocktails. Could be. So I would agree with this comment. Another one I saw was, that's also one I could relate to. It is I Just Finished Bunny by Mona Award. and I have no idea what the heck I just read. I just had some kind of experience, but I'm not sure what kind of experience, although I guess it involves hallucinations. I also hear a lot of people talk about this as satire, but I thought it was a pretty strong horror story, although I'm not strong enough in that conviction that I was willing to post it into horror yet. I had a great time reading, although I'm not yet sure how much I did or didn't like it. I was completely bewildered the whole time I was reading, which only made me more bewildered to actually understand how everything was wrapped up at the end. Well, understand is relative here. I want to preface the following by saying that I chose to read this book very literally. I can and might ruminate on some of the things that might have been metaphors for something deeper or just grad school, but I personally had more fun reading this presented exactly how it was. And that's how I went into the story. I also read it thinking everything I read was really happening. But then after reading all this, and especially this comment I'm about to read to you right now, however, the moment this book really clicked for me was when she was on the bus and the woman next to her was reading the symptoms of schizophrenia. I already realized that Sam was an unreliable narrator, but I felt this detail confirmed that Ava was definitely not real, her apartment was not real, etc. When you look at the story through that lens, I think it's easier to grasp the extended metaphor of the hybrids or drafts. We are all creating our reality in a sort of schizophrenic frenzy, imperfectly molding our perceptions into what we want things to be, and the self versus other mentality can be so crippling and dangerous. So, yeah, so that kind of made me realize, like, yeah, maybe the things just didn't really happen, and Samantha has just severe issues that lead to this experience. I mean, we read everything out of Samantha's mind, and that I also noticed that she's an unreliable narrator, because if I take, don't look at the back of my hair because it looks awful, but let me take my book. As you can see, I used some sticky tabs to underline and to write stuff, and I specifically want to show you, where is it? Where did I think I got something that was important and then never came back to it? I can't seem to find the part anymore, but there was a part where Samantha was always talking about we and talking about herself as like a multiple people. We would like to do this, we see Ava coming, we blah blah blah. And then there was one point where the we switched into the I, and it was when she met Ava again. So I kind of had a feeling that Ava was a safe place for her, and that she felt safe and better when Ava was around. But the fact that Ava wasn't real kind of dismisses this whole theory I had. So it's just weird. You can talk and think about this book for a long time and still have no answer, because when I thought like, okay, Samantha has severe issues while she is writing a book, and somehow you can't trust her with anything she says, and if any of the characters are real or things she made up in her head. And I was thinking so much about Jonah and whether he's real or not after reading these comments, and I still haven't decided. Because it kind of seemed like the only people Sam was close to and had a relationship with were the people that were not real. I mean, it was Ava she was in close contact with. We know she's not real. The bunnies, I don't know what about them is real and what's not real. Maybe they are just some crazy women, but not as crazy as Samantha has described them. But then there's also Jonah, one of the only people who really talks to her and really seems to like her, and who had a difficult past. But that's the point, he's talking about his past. And I haven't really, thinking back now, can't remember Ava talking about her past. Or Max. And Jonah talked a lot about what has happened to him before he got to Warren, and that he had drinking problem and things like this. So maybe Jonah is real. Maybe that's an indicator of who's real and who's not. And the other person is the lion. So her professor in university, that's also one of the people she was close to, and then from one day to the other wasn't close to anymore. I was very disappointed figuring out what had happened between them. I thought it was much more dramatic. But it was after she went home from his apartment, where everything was so weird and confusing, that she created Ava. So do we think the lion is real? Because to me it was also kind of strange that he didn't lead workshop anymore, just because the bunnies wanted care to do that. I'm sorry, I think this video is as confusing as the book right now, because I'm switching topics so much, but it's just, I don't know, it's very difficult to have a structured conversation about the things that were happening in the story, because it was just so much, and basically you can question everything, and I don't think I have read many stories with an unreliable narrator, so I'm not used to it, and I'm used to believing everything that's said. So I don't know. Please, if you have read it and if you have made it so far into this video and weren't bored, please tell me what you think about it, and if you think the things are happening and it's kind of a magical realism thing, or if it's all in Samantha's head, or if they are not happening at all and it's her book. Maybe would be very interested in figuring out what you are thinking about it. But you could scroll through Reddit and see so many people talk about this book and what they think it is about and what they think it means and which characters are real and which characters are not real, and if it's a book about loneliness or about drug abuse and drug withdrawal, or just being a writer trying to be a creative person, if it's about female friendships or a satire about female friendships. But I think that makes the book, if whether you liked it or not while reading it, that makes it a good book, because nobody is like 100% sure what's going on, and you can have so many conversations about everything. I think that's just a real talent to create something like this, you know? You probably do. So normally I would do lipstick right now, but the book insisted that bunnies don't wear lipstick. Makes me sad though, because I look strange without lipstick, so I'm cheating. And I'm doing a tinted lip balm. So I hope this video made kind of sense. I hope it wasn't a total mess. It was fun talking about this book though, and I think I will definitely reread it and try to read it in a mindset of the things that are happening are not real, and Samantha has some kind of issues, and maybe then I can figure out what's actually going on and who's real and who's not. But I definitely had a fun time. But as you can see when you look at the sticky tabs I put in, at the beginning there wasn't a lot happening, then there was so much happening, and in the end I was just so confused that I didn't even mark anything anymore, because I was like, where's the point? But I liked it. It was a good book. Please let me know what you thought about it, and yeah, see you in another video.